Tropical low development in the Coral Sea, potential cyclone formation, heavy rainfall across Queensland. That's the situation we're examining today, and there is quite a bit to unpack here. I've been monitoring the latest data from the Bureau of Meteorology, examining multiple forecast models and tracking conditions across the Coral Sea. What we're seeing is a pattern that is starting to look familiar to some of you who've been through cyclone seasons before. Right now across Queensland, conditions are telling us something important. Southern Queensland has been particularly dry. Worst December and January period for rainfall in years for many areas. The paddocks need water, dams are getting low. Meanwhile, up in the tropics, we've got warm sea surface temperatures, low wind shear and a monsoon trough that is becoming increasingly active. That contrast between what you need and what might be coming is worth examining carefully. Let us start with what is happening in the Coral Sea right now. There's a tropical low pressure system developing near Willis Island. For those unfamiliar with Willis Island, it sits out in the Coral Sea, roughly 450 kilometres east of Cairns. It is a small coral cay with an automated weather station, and it's one of our key monitoring points for tropical activity in this region. The low pressure system currently has central pressure around 1,005 hectopascals. Sea surface temperatures in the area are sitting between 28 and 29 degrees Celsius. That is warm enough to support tropical cyclone development. Wind shear, which is the change in wind speed and direction with height, is currently moderate but forecast to decrease over the next few days. When wind shear drops in the presence of warm water and good atmospheric moisture, that is when tropical systems can intensify. Now, I've examined three primary forecast models: the Access model from the Bureau of Meteorology, the GFS or Global Forecast System, and the European ECMWF model. All three are showing potential for this low to develop into a tropical cyclone. But here S, where it gets interesting and where we need to be careful about timing and track. The Access model suggests development occurring around Sunday or Monday, 26th or 27th of January. It tracks the system west-southwest initially, then more westerly as it approaches the Queensland coast. Potential landfall somewhere between Townsville and Mackay mid to late next week. The GFS model is slightly slower with development. It shows cyclone formation more likely by Monday or Tuesday. Track is similar, west-southwest to west, but it brings the system further south. This model suggests potential impacts anywhere from the Whitsundays down towards the Sunshine Coast. The European model sits somewhere between the two. Development Sunday through Monday. Track initially west-southwest, but it shows the system potentially stalling or slowing significantly as it nears the coast. That S important because a slow-moving system can dump extraordinary amounts of rain. What all three models agree on is development is likely. What they disagree on is exact timing, intensity, and particularly the track once the system gets within a few hundred kilometres of the coast. Let me put this in perspective with some historical context. This pattern is bringing back memories of 2011 for good reason. That year, we saw Tropical Cyclone Anthony cross the coast near Bowen in late January as a Category 2 system. Then less than 2 weeks later, Tropical Cyclone Yasi, one of the most powerful cyclones to ever hit Queensland, made landfall near Mission Beach as a Category 5. The 2011 sequence happened because conditions in the Coral Sea remained favourable for tropical development. Warm water, low shear, active monsoon. We're seeing similar atmospheric setup now. I'm not suggesting we're going to see another Yasi. That was an exceptional event. Category 5 cyclones are rare. What I'm saying is the broader pattern supports multiple systems potentially forming over the coming weeks if conditions persist. For those asking about potential impacts as far south as the Sunshine Coast, yes, it is possible. Not common, but possible. The track models are showing enough southward potential that areas from Rockhampton through to the Fraser Coast and even northern parts of the Sunshine Coast region should be monitoring this closely. Now let us talk about what actually matters to you. Timing, rainfall, wind, and what you should be doing. If this system develops as forecast, impacts begin well before any cyclone makes landfall. We're already seeing increased shower and thunderstorm activity across coastal and eastern Queensland. That intensifies through the weekend and into next week. Rainfall totals are where this gets significant. Even if the system doesn't become a cyclone or if it stays offshore, we're looking at heavy rain. The monsoon trough is active. Tropical moisture is flooding south and any low pressure system acts as a focus for that rainfall. Current forecasts suggest widespread falls of 100 to 200 millimetres across eastern Queensland. Some areas, particularly where the system tracks closest or if it stalls, could see 300 to 500 millimetres. Localised areas in the heaviest rainfall bands could exceed that. For southern Queensland, that's been bone dry. 200 mils would be welcomed by the land. But it needs to come steadily, not all at once. If we get 300 millimetres in 24 hours, that is flash flooding, not drought relief. The concern with a slow-moving or stalling system is rain just keeps falling on the same areas. Think back to Tropical Cyclone Debbie in 2017. That system crossed near Airlie Beach, then basically sat inland for days. Some areas received over 1 metre of rainfall. Widespread devastating flooding followed across southeast Queensland and northern New South Wales. Wind is the other major factor. If this develops into a tropical cyclone, we're re-looking at gales extending out 100 to 200 kilometres from the centre. Destructive winds closer to the core. Exact wind speeds depend on intensity at landfall. A Category 1 system has sustained winds of 63 to 88 kilometres per hour, gusts higher. Category 2 is 89 to 117. Category 3 is 118 to 159. We're re-looking at Categories 1 through 3 as most likely if development occurs based on current model guidance. Coastal areas cop the strongest winds. Storm surge becomes a factor. Heavy seas, dangerous surf conditions. If you in low-lying coastal areas that are vulnerable to storm surge and you are told to evacuate, you evacuate. Don T, wait to see how bad it gets. Let me walk through the likely timeline based on current forecasts. Keep in mind this can and will change as we get closer. Thursday and Friday, that is today and tomorrow. Scattered showers and storms across eastern Queensland, particularly coastal areas. Nothing severe yet, but moisture is increasing. Humid and sticky conditions, Saturday and Sunday, 25th and 26th. Showers and storms become more widespread and frequent. Heavy falls possible, particularly about the North Tropical Coast and the Northern Coral Sea. The tropical low should be organising during this period. Monitor updates closely. Monday and Tuesday, 27th and 28th. If cyclone formation occurs, it happens around this time frame. System tracks generally westward towards the coast. Showers and storms intensify across a broad area. Exact locations depend on the track. Wednesday onwards, late next week. Potential landfall or closest approach to the coast. This is when impacts peak wherever the system tracks. Heavy rainfall, strong winds, dangerous conditions. After landfall, if it occurs, the system weakens but continues producing heavy rain as it moves inland or south. This is when flooding becomes the primary concern rather than wind. Now, what should you be doing? This depends on where you are and what your situation is. If you're in northern Queensland from Cairns south to Mackay, pay very close attention to Bureau of Meteorology warnings and updates. Have your cyclone plan ready. If you don't have one, make one now. Know your nearest evacuation centre. Know your zone and what category cyclone it is rated for. Secure loose items around your property. Anything that can become a missile in strong winds needs to be tied down or brought inside. Outdoor furniture, trampolines, garden tools, rubbish bins. Start doing this over the weekend. Don't wait until warnings are issued and conditions are already deteriorating. Check your emergency kit. Torch, batteries, battery-powered radio, first aid supplies, essential medications, important documents in waterproof container, non-perishable food for at least 3 days, water at least 3 litres per person per day. If the power goes out and water supply is affected, you need to be self-sufficient. Fill your vehicle with fuel. If evacuation is required or if you need to travel after the event, fuel stations may not be operating. Clear gutters and downpipes. With heavy rainfall forecast, regardless of cyclone development, good drainage helps prevent water damage to your property. If you live in a caravan, tin shed or any structure not built to cyclone standards, identify where you will shelter if a cyclone warning is issued. These structures are not safe in cyclone force winds. For those with livestock or rural properties, bring animals to higher ground if flooding is likely. Ensure they have access to food and water if you can to reach them for several days. Some of you have been through this before. You know the drill. But if this is your first cyclone season in North Queensland, talk to your neighbours, talk to locals who have been through it. Southern Queensland, you're not off the hook. Even if the cyclone tracks well north of you, you are getting significant rainfall. Some of you desperately need it, but heavy rain after prolonged dry periods can cause flash flooding because the ground is hard and doesn't absorb water quickly. Monitor local creek and river levels. The Bureau issues flood warnings and flood watches. If you're in a flood-prone area and a warning is issued, don't drive through flood water if it's flooded Forget it. That S, the SES message, and at S worth repeating because every year people drown driving through flooded roads. Inland areas, particularly those along river catchments, be aware flooding can occur well after the rain stops. If the system dumps heavy rain on coastal ranges, that water flows inland. Rivers can rise rapidly and peak days after the event upstream. Now let me address something about uncertainty and forecast confidence. Weather forecasting is not an exact science, particularly with tropical cyclones 5 to 7 days out. The models give us guidance, but they are not perfect. Tracks can shift, intensity can change, timing can vary. What I am giving you is the best information available right now based on current data and model guidance. By tomorrow, this could look different. By the weekend, we'll have better clarity. By early next week, we should know with reasonable confidence whether we are dealing with a cyclone, where it's likely to track, and what intensity to expect. Check the Bureau of Meteorology website daily, multiple times a day if you are in a potential impact zone. They update warnings and forecasts as new information becomes available. Don T relies solely on social media or unofficial sources. The Bureau of Meteorology is your authoritative source for warnings and forecasts. State emergency services provide official advice on preparation and response. Some of you are asking if this is something to be genuinely concerned about or just another forecast that doesn't eventuate. Fair question. Here's my assessment. The atmospheric setup is conducive to tropical cyclone development. All the ingredients are there. Warm water, check. Low wind shear, check. Good upper level outflow, check. Monsoon trough providing low level convergence, check. Development is likely, not certain but likely. If I had to put a number on it, I'd say 70 to 80% chance we see a named tropical cyclone form in the Coral Sea over the next 3 to 5 days. Where it goes and how strong it gets, that S where uncertainty increases. Could track well offshore and barely impact the mainland, could make landfall as a Category 1, could intensify to Category 3. The range of possibilities is still wide. What tips the balance towards taking this seriously is the consistency across models showing development, the historical precedent of similar patterns producing significant cyclones, and the current state of the atmosphere and ocean. This deserves your attention, not panic attention. Be prepared, monitor updates, have a plan. If you do those things and the system stays offshore or weakens, you've lost nothing except a bit of time. If you ignore it and the system does develop and impact your area, you could lose a lot more. One other factor worth mentioning is this likely one to be the only system this season. We're in the heart of cyclone season. January and February are typically the most active months. If the broader pattern remains favourable, we could see multiple developments. That is what happened in 2011. That is what happened in 2017. When the Coral Sea is primed, it can produce several systems in succession. For those in agriculture, particularly sugar cane growing regions, you are looking at this nervously. Cyclones during harvest season are costly. Crops can be flattened, infrastructure damaged. If you haven't already secured what you can, do it now. For the tourism industry, particularly around the Whitsundays and Far North Queensland, this is obviously concerning. Monitor forecasts, communicate clearly with guests, have evacuation plans ready if needed. For emergency services, local councils, you're already preparing. For everyone else, recognise that if this eventuates, emergency services will be stretched. Help your neighbours, check on elderly people. Community resilience makes a significant difference in how well areas cope with and recover from severe weather events. Let me finish with the key takeaways. Tropical low in the Coral Sea is likely to develop into a cyclone. Current thinking is Sunday through Monday for development. Track initially west-southwest, then west towards the Queensland coast. Potential landfall mid to late next week, anywhere from Townsville to potentially as far south as the Sunshine Coast, though northern and central coast more likely. Heavy rainfall regardless of exact track. 100 to 200 millimetres widespread, higher totals possible. Flash flooding and river flooding both concerns. Strong to destructive winds if cyclone develops and tracks near the coast. Uncertainty remains about exact track and intensity. Monitor Bureau of Meteorology updates daily. Prepare now. Secure property. Check emergency kit. Know your plan. This is a developing situation. What I've provided is based on current data. By tomorrow, we all know more. By the weekend, clearer picture. Early next week, high confidence on track and impacts. Stay informed. Be prepared. Don't panic, but don't ignore this either. If you in a potential impact zone, take it seriously. That's the current situation. I'll continue monitoring and provide updates as